Hey, Sarah.
Hi, Megan. How are you?
Oh, it could be better. I have COVID. So it's my first time having it. I took my daughter, my eldest daughter, for a mommy and me trip, just the two of us down to Disney World for the Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party. I left my husband and my other two kids at home. We had a fabulous time. We went to a dessert party. We had a wonderful time. Went to the park. We went to Disney World, SeaWorld, and Universal. So we did it all.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the last day before, actually the morning of, before I was about to get on the plane, I thought to myself, I'm not feeling 100% here. Why don't I just take a COVID test? And sure enough, it came back positive. So I
I'm
know,
so sorry. You are one of the most probably the most careful person I know with regards to
thanks.
COVID. And
No,
I can't believe you haven't had it yet. And this is the first time. We're 3 years in, but
I know.
I hope you're
Yeah.
not being hard on yourself. You provided your daughter with an incredible, like, one-on-one trip, and to have it in this way is kind of a bummer, but don't let it overshadow.
All the fun.
Yes, all
Yeah.
the fun.
Yeah, thanks. I'm trying not to. I do feel a little bit of like guilt, like especially mom guilt, not being there for my other two. And I stayed in Orlando longer in order to quarantine. I didn't want to get on the plane positive. So luckily things are looking up and I'm gonna fly home tonight. My tests are coming back negative at this point. So I'm gonna fly home. So
Yay.
I'm excited to go back to my home base. But yeah, quite an experience.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yes. I know. My family still hasn't had it either, and I just feel like it's inevitable. At any point it's going to happen. It is what it is. But I know, I'm sorry it happened when you were away. I'm glad you're feeling better. And the symptoms were
Thanks.
not too bad, right?
No, they weren't. I mean, the first couple days I did feel like I was like run over by a train or something, but I started the
Oh.
antiviral. I know. I started the
Okay, they weren't bad.
antiviral. I know. It was pretty bad, but then I mean, it was like a flu. It feels like when you do when you have a flu. Like just like really, really bad. But then I started that antiviral and then within a day it started to feel like things were looking back up, like my symptoms were starting to go down. So if I sound a little froggy today on this episode, that's why I still have a little bit of like a COVID cough left over. So, excuse me. But yeah, other than that, that's it. How are you?
Oh, good. I'm better than you. No, we are in the swing of fall and Halloween, and not to sound basic, but this is my favorite season. It's just
Oh,
like the cool air and the fall leaves and the cozy outfits and planning everything for Halloween. And my kids, everybody I think knows they're like 6 and 3, and it's such a special age for Halloween. And we're planning costumes, and we're doing like 3 different costumes because we have actual Halloween, but then we have 2 other events. And
hmm.
it's just so much fun. And think back to the Halloweens that I had in my 20s, and I thought that nothing could beat those giant Halloween parties. And at the time I thought I was living life, right? Like this is as good as it can get. But let me tell you, having little kids during Halloween is where it's at. It just
Oh,
is so sweet, and they're so excited every single day about a different Halloween activity, and I'm just trying to soak up every minute. We're doing a family costume, and I know someday they won't want to do a family costume. So we're just going full in with everything they want to do, and it's so much
oh,
fun.
I know. I love Halloween too. I think it's my second most favorite holiday behind Christmas. I
Yes. Yeah,
love
yeah,
it.
yeah.
It's so
It
much fun. We both love to dress up too, so that makes
I
it
well, yes. I
the
love to
best.
dress up. I'm like,
Yeah.
how many costumes can we squeeze out of this one holiday?
I
Is 3 too many?
Oh.
3 is appropriate, right?
Oh, I think that's perfect.
I
Yay.
know. It's the best. Well, and I'm excited for you to be better and to get back home because we're doing some of those
Thanks.
festivities together. So it's going to
I
be so much
know.
fun.
Can't wait. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I'm super excited for today's episode. We have an awesome guest coming on. So, welcome everyone to the Platinum Perspective, the podcast about beauty, psychology, travel, luxury, and more. I'm your co host, Sarah.
And I'm Megan. Sarah and I are best friends who put the work in to get the most out of life so you don't have to.
Today, we are thrilled to have Anisha Gupta here to talk with us about sustainability in the beauty industry. Anisha is co founder at Bluebird, a climate tech startup founded in early 2021 with a software platform that provides actionable tools to enable consumer brands to develop lower waste and carbon products from the start of their product development process, make reductions, and communicate their efforts transparently to their consumers. Bluebird currently works with wellness and beauty brands like Rhode, Glossier, Beautycounter, and Ritual. Prior to founding Bluebird, Anisha held product development and supply chain roles at consumer brands of all sizes. Through this work, she was able to see firsthand the cost and complexity involved in building sustainable products, inspiring the inception of Bluebird to solve this need. Anisha was also named on the Forbes 30 Under 30 2022 list in the social impact category. That is an outstanding honor. I don't want to mention what I was doing before I was 30, but it definitely wasn't that. So, congratulations and welcome, Anisha. Thank you for being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, we're so excited to have you, Anisha. So we are going to start with our rapid fire segment. And in this segment, I'm going to ask you some hot topic questions. And we want you to answer in a few words. And you can circle back to these answers further on into the podcast episode. So, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Question 1. What is greenwashing?
So that's putting out information, possibly through your ads or through your site or on your packaging, that really is meant to either intentionally or unintentionally mislead your consumers about how your products perform from an environmental impact perspective.
Okay. Maybe a little bit of a follow-up, but what does carbon negative mean?
Yeah, so carbon negative is a little bit newer of a term. It's sort of an ambitious statement. So it really means putting out less carbon emissions, so greenhouse gases, than zero. So it's really meant for brands that are really cutting edge and able to kind of take in and put out even less carbon emissions than they produce. That's really like kind of a huge leap that we hope people will aspire to. But right now, we're just hoping to get people to reduce their emissions overall.
Okay. As a consumer, what are the top 3 things to look for when purchasing beauty products if wanting to support a brand making true efforts in sustainability?
Yeah, this one's really important. So there's sort of the ability to understand what the brand is actually doing. So having them explain things in a way that are transparent. So actually having communications about sustainability on their site. That can be a range of different topics. It could be recyclability. It could be, their climate or waste kind of goals, any of that. The second thing is really being able to provide clear and transparent instructions when it comes to end of life outcome. So a lot of the time we have the idea of sort of like wish cycling. Well, people will just put things in their recycling bin hoping to recycle something, but ultimately it doesn't end up. Yeah, right. You're like, oh yeah, they'll fix it, and someone will be like, yeah, I'm definitely going to take that, but it actually causes more issues at end of life. So really being able to have that be clear and transparent, and just being clear about, if it's not going to be recyclable, it's actually better to keep that out of the recycling bin. And then the third thing being for really cutting edge sort of new brands that are being innovative, actually making statements and goals around climate reduction. So climate impact and reduction. So being able to talk about their carbon emissions and how they're measuring and reducing.
Okay. A follow-up question. When you say end of life, you're talking about what happens to that product once it's done, like once you're done with it.
Totally. Yeah. A lot of brands are now starting to do things like compostability as well. And so there's different kind of instructions for all of those things. And sometimes consumers will end up with a piece of packaging and be like, what do I do with this? I'm sort of like, or there's also new innovations as well with folks like Pact Collective. So they partner with Credo and Sephora and Ulta and a bunch of different retailers to really drive taking back your empties when they are hard to recycle. So being clear about being able to leverage those programs as well for consumers is great for beauty brands and also for consumers looking for ways to send back their products.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Last question. What is the scariest thing you have come across when looking at the need for sustainability?
I think it's the role that misinformation plays in the industry. So both across consumers, but also across brands and, the actual manufacturers that produce the packaging or that produce the products themselves. So a lot of time people just operate off of ideas that they have or something they read on one blog or something one influencer said, and it kind of spreads like wildfire, and it's actually not based in the science. And I think that can often lead to brands or consumers making choices that actually aren't sort of aligned with impact.
Wow. That's scary. Yeah, I see that so often. So I became aware of Bluebird through my work. So our audience knows that I work as a consultant for beauty brands. And I have made the change in the past few years to only working with brands that kind of align with where I want to see the industry go, right? I want to see brands that are more sustainable, brands that are just making an effort to be a little more aware of their impact. And about 6 months ago, I started having a couple brands sending me their Bluebird statistics. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. What is this company? Because it made my job easier. I was able to say to Ulta Beauty or to Sephora, look at everything this brand is doing. They fall under your, for example, Ulta Beauty's Conscious program. Look at everything they're doing. They fall under your sustainability pillar. And then I'm able to pitch them to that retailer much easier. So I looked you up on LinkedIn, Anisha, and there's a lot out there on you. And it was really impressive. And I reached out to you to come on the podcast. And thank you so much for saying yes. So before we get more into this, I'd love to know just the how and the why of Bluebird. You're so young and you've created this incredible company that's making a difference in the world. It's very inspirational. So will you share a little bit about how and why this came to be?
Yeah, for sure. And thank you so much. Yeah, so I have always been interested in sort of the environment. I studied chemical engineering, but I knew that I wanted to do that because I wanted to go into sustainability. A lot of people will go into oil and gas or go into like other areas with that as well. But I knew that I really wanted to do sustainability with it. I then worked with Unilever, and they make a lot of sort of well-known brands like Dove and even Ben and Jerry's. Like they make, ice cream, but also they make a bunch of,
So
beauty and consumer products. Yeah. And I really saw how large companies like that can do sustainability and really integrate it because they have a lot of people. Like they have a lot of talent at their companies that are specifically tasked with this. The companies are able to set ambitions. They also have technology that helps them to kind of solve these problems. But at the same time, they're really giant and they're looking to these smaller brands for inspiration on really how to keep pushing and how to bring on consumers that really are looking for brands that, to your point, Sarah, are really doing the hard work and actually making conscious commitments. So I saw that. I'd also started working with a bunch of earlier stage brands and saw that they were facing this challenge. I had founders coming to me to be like, we really want to build sustainable products. We are a small brand. We don't have a lot of people. It's me and two other people, or it's just me. How do I even do this? I'm worrying about a million things. I just want to keep my brand afloat or even just get it started to begin with. And that's actually the best time to actually be able to think about ingraining sustainability in, but there are just not resources. So I came together. I was introduced to my co-founder, Jamie, through one of my best friends that I had gone to Columbia for my master's in sustainability with. And he had been working at Glossier. He had run technology at Glossier, and he really saw this problem there where, they were really getting called out by their consumers around, why are you putting glitter in your products, or why are you kind of, overpacking, or, those pink pouches that we all like remember and had in our cabinets. And, we had to figure out, how do you, as a larger brand or even a smaller brand, kind of reconcile that? So we came together and founded Bluebird.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we're now a team of 7, and we have software engineers, our third co-founder, and all of that.
Wow, you guys have made big strides in just a couple years. That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a wild ride.
Of course.
I read a quote recently that said the beauty industry churns out 120 billion products a year, and the vast majority of packaging ends up in landfills. Is this true?
So yeah, unfortunately, it is true. There is a really large amount of beauty packaging that is sent to landfills, and a lot of that is because of the actual size of the packaging itself. So what a lot of folks don't know about our recycling system, or maybe it's starting to come about, is that when it's too small, it actually falls through the grates or through the processing at recycling facilities. So like something like this, I have a little lip balm. It's way too small, and kind of the goal for being able to be recyclable on one of the ways that you can drive recyclability is actually the size of the product. So if it's kind of larger than a fist, or sometimes we say larger than a yogurt cup, and it's of plastic material, that helps it to be, captured by recycling streams. But then it also has a lot to do with the type of plastic. And a lot of the times with beauty packaging, you're using things that are really, look great. And maybe they're like acrylics or, different things that really stand out and make it really visually appealing. But then they're materials that aren't easily processed and then reprocessed into new materials. So then they end up in landfill.
Wow. So even just size can be a factor. That's incredible.
I love that we're having this conversation, and this will kind of go into the next question, because I want to revisit what you just said. So from a consumer point of view, you are showing a product, a component that might look alluring to the consumer's eye, but it's not the best fit for the future that we want, right? So as a consumer, we need to change our focus and what we're looking for. We're not looking for the shiny, sparkly, pretty component always. The product is going to be the same no matter what. We want to look for the component, which is the packaging and the outside, whatever it's held in. So it could be a glass jar or a plastic jar, or the plastic that holds the lipstick. We want to look for that is evolving and is produced in a way that can make a better impact on the future world, not necessarily the prettiest, shiniest thing on the shelf.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that ties back to kind of that consumer misconception that I was talking about. I think people often think, oh, if it's sustainable, it has to be something that's like sold in a Whole Foods. It's got that like cardboard look. It's like super crunchy granola. And we've actually seen a lot of brands being super innovative with the way that they're doing sustainability and ingraining it, not just in their packaging, but also in other aspects of their supply chain. Like as you think about how products are produced, they're sort of shipped, meaning there's a lot of transportation and there's fuel consumed in those processes. There's, and then obviously emissions are generated as well. There's sort of the types of energy that they're using. There's the actual, goop that goes inside of the packaging as well. There's all these different facets to sustainability. And we've seen a lot of innovation there for brands as well, for things that might be more naked to the consumer's eye. But that's why tools like ours really help to drive that transparency and bring that to light for consumers, and really help them to understand, like, is this brand doing well or is this brand not? Like, what should I be looking for?
Right. And then tying it back to the rapid fire question of greenwashing. The greenwashing is, again, when a brand maybe is putting the message out there that they are doing all of these types of things, but they in fact are not. And it's just really savvy marketing, or in some ways dishonest marketing, and it's tricking some consumers. So we have listeners that are, almost everybody, right, is a beauty product consumer. We all are.
Yes. If you're taking a shower, hopefully you're using something on your body.
Right. But then we also have listeners out there who come from my world, who are beauty brand founders. But let's look at sustainability for in both of these areas. So if we start with consumers, which is all of us, everybody's using some type of beauty and personal care products, some of us more than others.
It's a spectrum.
It's a spectrum, right? I think I'm on the high end of that spectrum. But let's break it down and make it really simple for our listeners. How do you know if your favorite beauty brand is taking sustainability seriously or if they're greenwashing?
Yeah, this is a tough one because I think one of the things that has made this so difficult for beauty brands who are actually taking action and trying to be transparent is that it's been pretty expensive traditionally for a brand to be able to showcase that information and really measure. I'm sure, Sarah, you're familiar with that through your work, actually being able to share that information out in a way that makes sense is really costly at times. And so looking for the right stuff on like a website or on packaging can sometimes be difficult. But I think firstly, just if there are communications about it, that they are backed up by some form of data or measurement. So if there is a number associated with it, or you can link out to somewhere that they reference for a stat of where they got that information, because a lot of the times uh, brands will say something like consciously produced or like sustainable and these sort of like fluffy blankety terms, and they really don't mean much. There's actually a lot of regulation coming out in Europe, they're sort of always leading the force on sort of regulation. We're a little bit slow to follow here in the US,
Yes.
but we are actually going through a review process of something as well, and that should make it a little bit easier for consumers as well. It's really meant to drive transparency for consumers, and that means that brands really do have to back it up. So really just look for hard statements that have data behind them and they're linked to something that can be substantiated.
I love that. And for everyone listening, a few episodes back, we had founders of the brand Sepia on, and their website is a great example of how to look. So they are putting transparency first. And if you hop onto the Sepia website, maybe you need to renew your retinol, or maybe you just want to see how they're doing it. They're showing all of their data provided by Bluebird on their website, and it's really simple. So they are kind of a good example of what to look for.
I really want to support beauty brands that are taking extra steps to be more environmentally friendly, but not being from the industry. It's sort of hard to tell who is doing what, and honestly, what I should be looking for. Like somebody can say they're sustainable, great. What are metrics I should be looking for? What are keywords?
So one of the things that you should definitely look for is recycling instructions or disposal instructions. So actually guiding you to the right end of life. So making that really clear for you as a consumer to be educated and empowered to know what to do with your packaging. Number two, probably knowing whether or not they're making any sort of statements around their climate impact. So are they talking about carbon emissions? Are they talking about climate? And are they measuring? That's really critical. A lot of brands these days are doing what's called carbon neutral. So we kind of talked about that in the rapid fire section. And that's, a step that a lot of brands take. I will say I have a little bit of a hot take on carbon neutrality.
We want to hear it. Let's get into it. Because I don't fully understand. Being in the industry, I want to understand it more. I've been hearing the word more frequently, and I'm not fully clear on it.
Yeah, so really it just means that you are, as a brand, essentially accounting for the amount of carbon emissions or greenhouse gases that you're putting out into the world. And then most often, you're then paying to then be able to offset that amount of emissions by investing in projects that can then pull carbon emissions from the environment. So a lot of the time it's folks that are investing in projects like planting trees. So adding trees to the environment, trees absorb carbon dioxide. And that's really what's causing the carbon emissions, is releasing that carbon dioxide. So by pulling it back into the environment, from the environment, that's actually helping from carbon emissions perspective, and helping to slow down climate change. The issue is that we're investing a lot in these technologies, and there's actually not enough space in the world for us to pull back enough carbon to actually slow down climate change. So you can't just plant trees. You also need certain types of trees. They can't just be little baby trees that are just planted for the first time, because you can imagine a tiny little plant that's like in your house isn't absorbing the same amount as like a giant redwood. And those trees are really sort of what we need to be able to absorb when they're actually older and a little bit larger. So from my perspective, brands should really be focusing in reducing their operations and their packaging upfront, as opposed to kind of being like, we're going to continue business as usual and then just sort of pay for those emissions to be then accounted for and then reduced, and it's sort of like someone else's problem to take care of. I will say there is sort of a baseline amount of emissions that really can be reduced. There's going to be something that kind of all brands will be contributing emissions to the environment, just because of how making products works. You have to emit energy to be able to produce anything. So I think it's a great complementary measure, but I don't think that it's the only solution.
Okay. I feel like I finally understand. So, because I've heard this term a lot too. And so it sounds like you can reduce emissions on the front end, and that would probably
Yes.
be preferable to paying towards the planting of new trees, which is sort of like an easy way out, but doesn't actually solve the problem on the front end, which is all the emissions to begin with.
Exactly. That's
Okay.
exactly right. I will say that there are sort of new technologies that are coming out beyond just planting trees. This is probably meant for more of like a climate podcast, but there are things that can actually suck, sort of carbon emissions from the air. And there are really new technologies, but those are taking a while to kind of ramp up. They're really complex. And so as we kind of invest in that, we're really, hoping that people will continue to reduce prior to, paying to then offset.
Okay, that's good to know. So, breaking it down is super simple for our consumers. When you're buying a beauty product, you want to check the brand's website and see if they're providing transparency that's linked to any type of metric showing how they're making a difference. And then also you want to read the packaging, and lots of times it's on the box, not the actual component. So you want to read the box on how the product should be disposed of. So whether it should be recycled, or if it's not able to be recycled, don't throw it in there. Note to self. Okay. Anything I'm missing there, or those are good simplified tips for
Yeah,
consumers?
I think that's great.
Okay. So let's move on to brands. So I spent the first 10 years of my career working for these really big number one beauty brands. And now I'm a consultant for much smaller emerging brands. A lot of them are still in the startup phase. But one commonality that I found with both of these types of brands is that they want to be sustainable, but ultimately they're not making that choice due to logistics or red tape or cost. What are some best practices for like maybe some brand founders that are listening right now and they would like to start making better choices?
Yeah, this is a really important question. I've been in those seats. Before I started Bluebird, I was running procurement and logistics, basically all of the things that a COO would do at a brand, for dozens of brands. And really, you're just trying to get products out the door. You're trying to get them there on time. You're trying to solve customer service issues. You're trying to just make sure that your products sell, can make it to the retailers on time. There's like all of these different challenges that you're facing. And I understand that it's really hard to add sustainability is another thing that you just have to think about. And it's often something that brands will be like, I'm too scared to even talk about it, because there is sort of this like risk to that these days. As people are sort of fishing for greenwashing, consumers are often sort of out for blood. Something goes viral on TikTok, you're terrified of that happening. So I think the best thing that you can do is first just recognize that everybody is sort of on a continuous improvement spectrum. It's not, no one is perfect. There is no brand in the world that is doing 100% when it comes to sustainability. If you wanted to do 100%, you would not start a brand at all. And that's not how our world works, right? We all want to consume things. It helps us in our lifestyle. These things make us happy and they help us, feel like individuals, like they're all exciting. So we're not going to stop consuming things. We're not going to stop producing things. So that's just like a blanket message I wanted to provide. But and I often end up giving these sort of pep talks to founders I work with a lot of the time. But yeah, I mean, I think some of the really critical things that you can do is just start somewhere. So start with like a really easy way and really low cost. So that's really why we built Bluebird, is really to make it really accessible to brands. So we start with things that are as low as $50 a month or $100 a month, and we have like startup plans that are really built to help early stage founders, because like as I mentioned, having these sort of decisions being made early or as early as possible are really how you can continue to grow. Sarah, I'm sure you've had this experience where you've had founders that are trying to launch into retailers and they then need to repack, or they need to add new artwork to be able to then have appropriate information on there for the retailer, and this is all really costly stuff. So if you can think about that earlier and actually scale with that, it helps you to keep from disrupting your operations down the line, and really can help you get into those retailers faster as well. So
Yes, that's a great point. And actually, it's also triggering for me. I have a lot of brands that want to take that next step and launch in the EU. And
yes.
oftentimes they have to get brand new components or packaging and new
Mhm.
language. And to your point about the EU always being a little bit ahead of where the US is, it is great if you are in development for your brand or just for a new product. It doesn't have to start with all of your assortment, to look at what the qualifications are for the EU with regard to sustainability to kind of get ahead of that.
Totally. And that's part of what we do as well. So we have brands like brand new brands that come onto our platform and can just plug in what they're actually doing today. So they have a new product in mind and just put out concepts, and it will spit out what is your approximate carbon emissions, what's your approximate waste, and kind of sort of like where does that fall on like the not so great, needs improvement, to this is best in class spectrum. We actually do a lot of that benchmarking for you and spit out likely recyclability and end of life outcome as well. So that's really during development, taking advantage of that, Sarah, to your point, and then actually being rest assured when you actually launch the product that you're going to be able to meet regulation, or at least have a substantiation there to help you answer those questions.
Okay, that's good to know. How about, this isn't in our script, so
No
but I just was
worries.
thinking of it. So how about if you are a merchant at a really big brand right now, a brand that maybe is has never looked at sustainability, and you have 150 products in your assortment, and it's kind of embarrassing to think about the fact that you've never looked at this, but this brand, maybe, it started before you were even part of the team. What would be some steps, or what would be the guidance here from you on like how to enter into sustainability, and how to maybe broach that with your company?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where it comes to like two things. One, it's that this is really becoming table stakes for being able to be competitive in the market. So having sustainability communications, ambitions is really, really critical for not only actually front end sort of brand recognition and brand building and brand awareness, but also for loyalty. So we're seeing a lot of the time that consumers will come back to brands that they believe are making commitments towards sustainability at a much higher rate than just brands that are kind of either not talking about sustainability at all and might have quite similar products. So there's actually data to back that up as well. So that's one thing, is actually talking about the impacts from a business perspective. So there really is a business case to be made around sustainability and how that drives your business forward. But the other piece is really noticing that it's not quite as costly as you might think to invest in these initiatives as well. Like, technology has really, really helped to make the barriers to doing this a lot easier. It used to be that, a single consultant would have to sit there and like do all of this information by hand, and it would take months. We spoke with sort of a larger recognizable brand last year, and they had gone ahead and been like, okay, this is our first step into sustainability. We're going to hire, this consultant on. It's like a project in like the six figures, and we're going to map out our entire supply chain, measure everything. It's going to take, 9 months to do. And they were like, we took a snapshot at 9 months and our operations have changed since that 9 months have happened. We've launched new products. We've launched in new retailers. We've, changed our packaging. And it's like, okay, well, now all of that work we just did is completely moot. So actually investing in, these new technology platforms that really help you stay on top of things and keep things up to date and actually upload everything sort of in bulk and keep things live is actually really helpful. So a lot of teams are actually, able to avoid having to hire a full-time person to manage this as well by leveraging software that can do it a lot faster. So I think those are the two things. Like, technology is your friend, use it. It will help you to save costs, but also it can really drive your business from a
I love that. Those are so key. So, we have a pretty big community, maybe of listeners that are not a brand founder, but you're working for these big beauty brands. And maybe you also want to be a part of this sustainability movement, but you have an established career in a big beauty brand. And so I just want to take this moment to empower you to broach this subject with your company. And it's pretty simple. You could reach out to Anisha, reach out to Bluebird, and start the small steps that it takes to kind of move in to what we want the future of the beauty industry to look like.
It's good, Sarah. Money talks, but so do regulations. And you had mentioned that there were some new regulations coming out of the US and abroad that could be important for brands to know about, and may make it more urgent for them to prioritize sustainability work. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? What's happening?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of the sort of folks on the brand side might be hearing about something called MOCRA. So I'm not going to talk about that very much, but that really has to do a lot more with the ingredient side, some disclosures that you'll have to put together on your ingredient listings, and actually putting that out. But something that I'm really hearing nobody talk about, which is pretty terrifying to me, is this new regulation coming out in California. So one of the things that people might be aware of is, similar to in the US, when you're trying to buy a car, a lot of the time car manufacturers, actually all the time, car manufacturers actually build to the California standards, because California is usually pushing the envelope in terms of regulation, and that really helps to lead the market forward, because you're not going to build a California version of a car and then you're going to build a version for the other 49 states. You're going to build a product that will be able to be sold in all markets. So it's similar to that. So there's a regulation coming out that requires in California for brands to be really clear and specific about their recycling. So this is sort of why I've been driving forward recyclability instructions today, is really to help brands out with having that be top of mind. So essentially this is going to require you to keep on file if you're making any claims around recyclability, or you're talking about that on your packaging, on your website, or on any of the sort of enclosing documents that come in with anything that you sell, or even talking about it with retailers. if you have it in any of those places and you sell in California, you're going to be required to have this information on hand to say, why do you believe that this piece of packaging or that component is recyclable? So this is called SB 343. There's a lot of talks sort of going on about it in the regulatory circles right now, because it's really going to drive forward a lot of need for transparency when it comes to recycling. So that's one thing that I wanted to put on people's minds. And the other is the green guides in the US. So that really focuses more on the greenwashing side of things, from making statements like carbon neutral or making statements like sort of sustainable as a broad term, things like that. So being able to really be punchier with the language you're using and making it data backed.
Wow, that's fascinating. I hadn't heard of that yet.
Yeah.
When does that take place?
SB 343?
Yes.
Yeah, so that is actually going into effect in January 2024 is when they're finalizing actually what needs to be regulated under that regulation. And then throughout the year, there's going to be more and more updates coming out about what the regulations actually are. So brands that are starting to print artwork next year need to think about this sooner rather than later.
Okay, hold on. I'm taking more notes now.
Yeah, exactly. It's urgent. Like it's like literally in the next 3 months that brands,
That's
should
urgent.
start to be aware of this.
That's urgent.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. That's great to hear. I love it when there's legislation that gets passed that affects the industry positively. So for all the brand founders listening that are now starting to freak out, no, would you share how can they quickly get started on this work? Is it just as simple as going to your website and signing up? Do you do a consultation? What does the beginning process look like for them?
Yeah, I'm super excited about the timing of this because we actually just released a new feature that actually helps you to get on board really quickly and easily and actually use our software for free for 3 of your products. So if you go to our site, which is bluebirdclimate.com, you'll have buttons everywhere that say try it free. And as soon as you do that, if you are on a Shopify site, you'll be able to just link sort of your URL. It'll pull in all of the products you've got. You can select 3 of them and it will automatically spit out recycling instructions for you and the substantiation on why they're deemed recyclable. That'll really help you get kickstarted on your SB 343 journey. And you'll have that for free. You'll also get access to a widget that you can put on site that will actually back up those instructions and provide that really quickly and easily for your consumers. So that's for free. And then we can obviously upgrade into a plan that will help you to measure carbon emissions or do that for all of your products for the recyclability side.
That's wonderful. That makes it so simple. And for anyone listening that doesn't know me personally and doesn't work with me, if you're considering pitching your brand to a retailer, this is what they're looking for right now. They're looking to see if you are taking strides in sustainability and if they can advertise that, because this is the future that they're looking for as well in the industry.
Yeah, we're also working, we're sort of in talks with retailers to actually put directly the Bluebird information on retailers' websites. So
Fantastic.
if you actually have that information, it'll actually help you to put that up seamlessly without actually needing that. And so you could say, oh, I'm already in this retailer. I already have this information. You might be able to get into an additional retailer as a result of that as well.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
Yeah, that's great. You know how Sephora has the check mark and Ulta has the conscious beauty? I feel like Bluebird needs a Bluebird check mark or something for brands. You can just
yeah, for sure. Or we can, try to harmonize these standards across retailers.
Right,
so
that
it's
might
not
be
so
helpful.
difficult, but we can't get everything all at once.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, lastly, I'd love to ask, you had shared with us that you are using AI to make this work easier for brands. We've recently started using AI for our businesses, and it's really incredible. I'm just interested in knowing more about how you're using it for Bluebird.
Yeah, so this is part of that new kind of really fast onboarding process that I talked about. So what we're actually going to do is, as you go in and you put in your Shopify URL, our software is leveraging AI to actually look at an image of your product that is listed on your site and recognize that you have a cap and a jar, for example, in your product, and actually make your onboarding process super, super easy. So it's going to use basically image recognition is the technology that we're using. And this is really just built to make it as easy as possible, because we know that you're busy. We know that Black Friday is coming up. You're trying to get ready for that. You're probably pulling your hair out right now and you're like, I don't need another thing on my to-do list. So we're really trying to make the software do all the work for you. And you could probably get started on Bluebird in less than 5 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's encouraging.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, this has been so fun. This has been so fascinating. I think there's been so much good information just for consumers and for brands as well. But there's a place to start for everyone. So whether you are in the beauty industry, you now know where to start, or whether you're just someone who loves to buy beauty products, you now know where to look. Go on to that brand's website. If you are an avid purchaser of a few specific brands, just hop onto their website on your phone and look down and see if you can see where they're transparent with their sustainability efforts. And if not, and kind of pulling it back to a point Anisha made earlier, that there is so much on the market now. So if your favorite product or your favorite brand is not aligning with your where you'd like to see the industry go with sustainability, check out some brands that are. There are so many amazing products out there and amazing brands that are really putting the effort into making the world a better place, to be cheesy about it. But put your dollars where you want to see the industry going. So Anisha, this has been so fun having you on. Where's the best place for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way to do that would be just going to bluebirdclimate.com and clicking the try it free button if you want to get started. You can also email me directly. I'm going to put my email out there and see what my inbox, how my inbox treats me, but it's just Anisha, Anisha at bluebirdclimate.com. And you can reach me there. I'm happy to answer questions. A lot of the time the software will answer the questions as well, but I guess, Sarah, to your last point as well, I wanted to kind of make a statement to consumers as well. I think a lot of the times there's been this kind of another point on misinformation in the industry that, the packaging is ultimately in your hands, your responsibility. You have to then, really hold the brunt of what happens to it at the end of its life. And while you kind of do that final like pass off to actually put it in the right bin, it's really up to the brand to really make the best decisions. And it's beyond just the packaging, it's also the choices that they make in their supply chain. So outside of, taking the end of life action that the brand is giving you, the best thing that you can really do to help kind of drive action in the industry is actually talking to your brands and actually asking them questions about their sustainability. So we've had brands come to us that say, consumers have been DMing me and asking me about, how do I recycle my products, or how do I, asking me about my carbon emissions because they heard it somewhere or they heard it on this podcast. And now they're asking me, they actually really do read every single one of your messages and respond to them, because brands want to hear from you and they respond to what consumers are demanding, even more so than science. So educate yourselves as much as you can and ask the right questions. We've had brands who've done that, and we're working on actually a brand directory as well that will kind of list out the brands that we're working with, and what they've actually done and the actions that they've taken. So stay tuned for that on Bluebird's site as well.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's a great reminder for consumers. I love that. And brands are going to fall in suit with where the demand is. So if the demand is a sustainable brand and sustainable products, that's where the revenue is going to come from. So that's a great reminder.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have some takeaways, and Anisha, feel free to jump in if you want to correct or add on. But number one is be aware of greenwashing. Now we know what it is. Number two, make informed purchases to help push the market toward a greener, more sustainable place using your money to support brands taking the right steps. And number three, for brand founders, it's never too late to start making more sustainable choices for your company.
Yeah, absolutely. The last thing I'll add is on the greenwashing side, there's a new term kind of coming out in the industry called green hushing, which basically is just saying nothing about sustainability at all. And it's just like, we're going to hide, we're not going to say anything. And often brands will do that when they don't have anything to say, and they do it because consumers haven't asked them about it. So if you see a brand that you love their products, but you want to know about what they're doing on sustainability and they don't have anything on their site or on their products, ask them about it. It will probably drive them to have to talk about it.
I love that. Okay. That's great. Great reminders. Well, this has been so much fun. Thank you, Anisha, for being here today. That's all for this episode of Platinum Perspective. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Tune in every week for more beauty, psychology, luxury, and travel. Please tell your friends to rate, like, and subscribe. Bye.
Bye.